Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome back to another of TTA's summer sessions. Today we're joined by Sarah Brouner, who's going to be talking about working with homeschooled students and what tutors need to know. So I'll hand it to Sarah now.
Okay, thank you, Julius. Hi, welcome everybody who's attending live, and also thank you for joining me on recording as well if you're watching it a bit later on. So today's talk, as Julius said, is about homeschooling, home education. Forgive me, I'll be using those terms interchangeably throughout. I know there's a slight nuance to it, but it's just the way that I slip in and out of it. I'll be looking at kind of what we need to be aware of as tutors if we're working with homeschooling students, and also just ways to kind of enhance their experience, really, because they don't get to experience the same kind of education. Not that it's any less, it can be absolutely wonderful, but it's just not the same as if they're going to a mainstream school. Completely different experiences sometimes. So this is mostly aimed at tutors, that's why you're on, your tutors, but parents may also find it informative and maybe insightful. So if you are a tutor working with families, you might want to direct them to the video to find out a little bit more. And also I'll be talking about resources a bit later on. So before I kind of get into the main parts of what we're going to be doing, just a little bit about me. If you've not met me before or connected with me, my name's Sarah Brouner. I am a science and maths tutor and have been tutoring for around the last 10 years. Prior to that, I was an applied scientist. So I was a clinical physiologist and governance manager working in private healthcare. I now run my own business, SB Tutoring, and I'm an experienced homeschooling tutor, as well as maths and science for mainstream school students as well. As you can see, maybe from the first slide, I've won a couple of awards. I've been lucky enough to win some awards, one of which was Homeschooling Tutor of the Year as well. So in this talk, as I've said, we're going to be sort of raising our awareness of what it's like to be a homeschooled student, understanding the legalities around home education, in particular in England. There are slight differences in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, just slight nuances there. So I'm going to be focused on education in England. So if you're joining from another country, it's going to be maybe completely different legalities around that. This is the legalities at the time of recording. I'm sure you're all aware we've had a new government come in recently and they may change some things, but it's worth keeping an eye out. And we've had the King's speech today, which I haven't had the chance to catch up on, but I'll be doing so later to see if there's any changes around sort of home education. As well as that, I'm going to be looking at maybe tailoring structure around homeschooling and how we can do that as tutors if we come into a family, how we can ensure that that child's learning is kind of more structured, especially if they're preparing for an exam as a private candidate, and just generally hopefully give you some knowledge about improving confidence around working with homeschooling students. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the legalities, because when we work within the legalities, then we are providing effective homeschooling, essentially. This is what all tutors should be aware of, and we should be doing if we've got home educated students. As you can see, that legalities centre around that they should be efficient, full-time and suitable. I'm going to be looking at deregistering and also the role of local authorities. So in the UK as a whole, education is compulsory, but schooling is not. And that's still stood since the Education Act of 1996 and 1980 for Scotland. And parents or guardians need to be aware that education is efficient, full-time, and suitable according to that child's age, ability, aptitude, and any special educational needs that that child may have. So the responsibility lies with the parents. And at this point, I just want to take a moment to think about something which took me quite a long time for the penny to drop. And that is, in England, we have an opt-in system to education. So homeschooling or home education is actually the default education in England. And it's easy to get wrapped up on this treadmill. Some of you may be parents. I'm a parent myself, where you're receiving emails when your child reaches sort of age 3, 4. Don't forget to apply for school. You need to apply for school by this deadline. Get your forms in, and then you're on the treadmill of infant school, junior school, high school, and it's easy to forget. Actually, there is always another choice. There is home education and homeschooling as well. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but there is a choice for parents there all the way through education. But at the start, it's definitely an opt-in rather than an opt-out system. So what does constitute as efficient, full-time and suitable? Because I'm sure many of you agree that's really ambiguous. That's really open to interpretation. That's actually the beauty of homeschooling, I think. But the DFE don't actually make clear definitions to each of these. So there's no definition for efficient education in law, but there is guidance. I feel their guidance is equally a little bit ambiguous in that it says it achieves what it's intended to achieve. So think of that what you will. You have to think about really what the end goal is for that child and then work backwards. We'll look at that a bit later on when we're tailoring structure. There's no legal definition of full-time education either in terms of sort of homeschooling, but it does need to occupy a significant proportion of that child's life. Now, homeschooling doesn't have to look like school at home. It doesn't have to mirror what happens in mainstream schools, but we can use this as a guide for families. So those that do attend mainstream school normally have 5 to 6 teaching hours a day, around 190 days per year, and that's spread over around 38 weeks. But again, in the DFE guidance for homeschooling, they again reiterate that it doesn't have to mirror school, but it does have to be a significant chunk or proportion of that child's life. And I think as a tutor, it's important to remember that homeschooling can take place anywhere, anytime, in any subject. It does not have to be the subjects even at school. And we'll look at examinations a bit later, but children do not even need to sit formal qualifications or examinations. It's not a legal requirement that a child has functional skills or a GCSE or an A-level. As tutors, I'm sure you'll agree, it's strongly advisable, and that we advise families and students it's definitely worth getting some qualifications, certainly in core subjects, English and maths, because that presents a barrier much later on in their life that they may well end up regretting or having to go back as an adult and relearning things. So suitable education, that's efficient and full-time. Suitable, again, no definition in that Education Act about suitable other than suitable for age, ability and aptitude and SEN, like I've said before. Even if there's no specific link with a national curriculum, there should ideally be an appropriate minimum standard aimed at, so that when that child grows up, they can be a fully functioning adult, an independent citizen in the community they grow up in and beyond. So education could be considered, this home education could be considered not suitable if maybe it's satisfactory in what they're learning, but the environment at which that child is learning in makes things really difficult to work. If it's noisy or they don't have access to certain basic materials, it could be seen as not suitable if it leads to the child being excessively isolated from people, and then that's going to impede social development and mental health. But overall, again, open to interpretation. Okay. So someone said, oh, I think your slides have changed. No, we're still on legalities, so I haven't stopped changing my slides, Julius, don't worry. There will be one soon. Deregistering, that's my next point on this slide. So just actually a quick poll, if you want to come on the chat, if you're able to, just with a Y or an N, how many of you are actually homeschooling students at the moment if you're a tutor? How many of you work with homeschooling? Or have children that are homeschooled, of course? Oh, a real mix. Fantastic. I think it's about a 50-50 split at the moment. Okay. Excellent. Right. Okay. Yeah, a real mix, I think. It's about a 50-50 split. Yeah. So I think deregistering, the two things that parents worry about most is this process and then the socialization, and then the thought of exams comes a little bit later on. So deregistering is where if the child is in school, they've opted in, they've gone through the whole system or whatever, is where you legally take the child off the school register and educate at home. That is a parent or guardian's responsibility. That has nothing to do with tutors, but you get asked a lot of questions. What is deregistering? How do I do it legally? Where does my kind of involvement in that end as a parent? So you only have to deregister if you have registered in the first place. If the child has never attended a school, you don't need to do this process at all. And the official legal process that you may have to inform parents about is that the parent needs to send a letter or an email to the head teacher at the child's school stating that you would like to take the child off the register or deregister that child, and then state the date that that will be from. There is no kind of minimum notice period that that child has to serve at school. It's not a job. So that can be with immediate effect. And you would also state in that letter, if they're a parent, that you will be home educating them or you will be homeschooling them. Now, schools are under no legal obligation to reply to that, but I do advise parents it's worthwhile asking for receipt or acknowledgement that the school have had that letter for peace of mind, because at that point the parent's legal responsibility is done. They don't even need receipt of that letter. It's wise, but they don't need it, but their legal responsibility is done. The child will be taken off the register, and then homeschooling or education can begin. And the key points for parents are that I always say is that you do not need to justify your decision for homeschooling your child or home educating your child. You are under no legal obligation to justify your reason. You have no notice period, so it can begin straight away. So deregistration starts on their last day of attendance, but legally, that next morning must be the first day of their homeschooling. So they have to have things in place prior to deregistering. I think is very wise. Planning ahead is really important because it has to happen straight away. The school will immediately remove the child from the register, and then, as I've said, the parent has to have that responsibility from there on in. What I will add is if the child has an EHCP and they're at a specialist school, the parent does need approval from the LA before deregistration occurs. So there must be approval from the LA and the school if they're at a specialist school. If the child has an EHCP but is at a mainstream school, they don't need that approval. And then the local authorities may get in touch, the LA, and again, this is, I think, quite fearful for most parents. They're worried about this heavy-handed approach and their child being marched back to school. It's not an experience that I've ever seen. We'll talk about LAs in a second. I mean, the worst case scenario is that if the local authority deem that the child's not having suitable, efficient education, standard of education, they can issue a school attendance order. Exceptionally rare. I've never seen it in my practice. Certainly as a tutor coming in, that parent is taking measures to ensure that a child is educated well. But it's something to be aware of. Okay. So local authorities, like I said, could be quite a concern. What happens is that once that child's been removed, they will contact the parent, usually within the first few weeks of home education. So it's not instant. These things take a bit of time, a bit of bureaucracy, but they will contact them. And they're checking whether it is efficient, full-time and suitable education that that child receives. Most of the contact is informal with a telephone call or a letter, and parents can expect a letter annually because the LA will want an update annually on how that child's education is going effectively, and what have they been doing. Now, parents need to send kind of an education report, a little summary of what they've been doing for the year, not exact things, not photographs of work or evidence or anything like that, but it's a report that kind of outlines that parent's sort of philosophy to education, their approach to home education, and the kind of activities that that child enjoys. It's the parent's responsibility to write these, not any tutors or anyone else sort of coming in and out of that child's education journey. It's parents and guardians. Parents are worried about this report. They're worried that it won't be good enough. The LA is going to come in to their home, which they can legally refuse. But there's a fantastic charity out there called Education Otherwise. Please go Google it. So it's Education Otherwise. They have brilliant resources for professionals like us, but also parents as well, with template letters. I'll answer some questions at the end of this section. I can see I've got some questions come through. Yeah. So really good template letters for educational reports. I refer to these as well. And do make it clear to parents they are under no obligation to meet with anybody from the LA. They can refuse home visits that have been requested by the LA. That can be particularly distressing if a child's got SEN and doesn't like strangers coming into the home, and etc. So it can all be kept in writing. What I will say is that local authorities, again, are not obliged to provide any resources for home education families either, because it's the parents' full responsibility for funding and supplying that home education. LAs do not have to fund it. I've been asked a question, so who do they send the report to? That will be the LA, their local authority, and the local authority will contact the parent first. So I always say, wait for contact first. You don't need to go to them. They will send you a letter, and then you'll have all the details on there. Thank you, Matthew, for that question. I personally think it'd be great to have a budget for homeschooled students, just like you have a budget for mainstream school students. At the moment, that's approximately around £7,200 per annum per pupil. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could have that at home to play around with and educate our homeschooling students? Great idea. I think it's quite a far away in reality, though. As a tutor, just to finish off this section, I like to keep records of my students' work, digital records. So I take a photo of what we've covered, a worksheet, maybe them working on an experiment with me because I'm a science tutor, maybe in garden if we've done something. And I send these to parents. It's really nice to do a little bit at the end of the month and send them like a little photo collage or what we've been doing. But also it's fantastic for parents who write these reports, because not that they need to show evidence to the LA, but you try and remember what your child learned in November last year. But by sending them the reports, they can go, yes, and they covered this in math, and we did this in English, and this is our style of doing it. So it's a really good idea as tutors to keep records, a portfolio, if you like, of the work that you've been doing with students, report writing. So I do my reports at the end of the month, and I send those to parents about what we've covered in each session, or what we've covered perhaps per subject that I've taught, and any links that they can go to for activities outside the home. So whether what you've been learning links to an exhibit at a museum or a place of interest, for example. And so that's fantastic for those reports, really. Okay, someone's asked, why monthly and not half-termly? Well, half-termly, again, is quite hard to keep track of for me. It's kind of 6 weeks. It's just a personal preference that I do monthly reports. It tends to be rolling as well. Homeschooling doesn't always follow the terms that school does, and so I keep it monthly. Okay. A changing slide, finally. My slides are minimal. So I want to have a look around safeguarding because we've got the legalities out of the way. And the next really important step is ensuring that the child is safe and that we as tutors are safe as well. We're working in all sorts of people's homes, or they're coming to our home, however your preference is. So yes, the parent is fully responsible for funding, the parent is fully responsible for the suitability of education, etc. But the local authorities are still responsible for safeguarding children in home education, as much as those who attend school. The most recent kind of figures I could get around safeguarding in home education from the DFE is in 2019, so pre-COVID. And that report stated that there's no proven correlation between home education and safeguarding risk. It's not these children are at extra risk. And the NSPCC had a similar report in 2014 that found the same correlation as well. It's not seen as a causative factor of abuse or neglect in the majority. Obviously, there's always cases that are on the extremes, but in the majority, it's not a factor there. However, what I will say is that these children don't see professionals on such a regular basis as those attending school. Those attending school are seeing professionals constantly, different teachers, people walking around the corridors, pastoral care teams, etc. So as tutors, if you're coming into someone's home to tutor, you are now that frequent professional. So I think it's really imperative to keep vigilant, astute, keep up your training. So safeguarding level 2 or above is really advised. And particularly keeping up kind of qualifications if you're working around SEN or courses or CPD. And there's some fantastic courses on safeguarding out there. So personally, I really like the NSPCC course and one by IHASCO as well. So it's IHASCO. I think that's one of the best courses I've done at level 2. It can be difficult to know as a professional tutor, where do you go if you have a safeguarding concern? So if you're working for an agency, and this student is, just part of that agency. A lot of homeschooling students do tend to go through agencies. Then the agency is your first port of call. There should be a designated safeguarding lead at that agency that you can speak with, relay any concerns. But if you're privately employed, if you're a professional tutor and the family contacted you, say, over social media, that can be a bit daunting, like, where do I go? So I recommend the local authority, MASH. If you're not sure about something and you just want some advice. So MASH stands for Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub. Every council will have one. So you can literally Google the word MASH and then your county, and it should come up with a page that you can look at, have an email, a phone. It's not that you'll phone them and alarm bells will start sounding off and they're going to rush to the house, and unless it's an emergency, of course. But MASH have been really useful in deciding kind of what the best course of action is, what level of support might be needed for you or the family. And they're there to provide information, advice, and signposting, really. So MASH is really, really useful. If you are very concerned about a child, local authorities also have a CSPA, which is a children's single point of access. It's part of children's services. If you're worried about a child's wellbeing or safety, you're suspecting neglect or abuse, then you can contact them. And again, you can easily Google CSPA, S-P-A, or children's services for your authority. And of course, if you feel there's imminent danger, immediate danger, then you'd contact 999. I've never had an incident in, I've been working with homeschool students about 7 years. I've never had an incident where I've had to call emergency services, but you need to know that just in case. I also think it's really important to safeguard yourself as a tutor as well. You're going into people's homes. We're not a babysitting service. We are a professional tuition service. But sometimes parents feel, oh, tutor's here, I'll pop out now. So you may wish to have a disclaimer that parents sign prior to tuition to not leave you alone with a minor, that a parent remains on the premises, and that life happens, of course. You know, emergencies happen, you've got to pick your other child up from school or whatever, someone's sick. But then in my disclaimer, I would say that then the tuition session ends. Then that's done, and they sign that to kind of accept those terms, if you like. Tasha, what if you're online? Absolutely. Well, I think the same applies if you're online. If you're suspecting problems, go to MASH. Or if you're part of an agency, then you can talk to the agency and they can find out more. It's a difficult one, but that's where I would go for signposting and advice on that. And of course, there are online sort of safety and safeguarding aspects to a lot of courses as well. As a tutor, I'd also just finish up by saying, in terms of safeguarding, that personal indemnity or public liability insurance is wise. It depends on the nature of your tuition, which one is right for you. I go to others' houses, so personal indemnity is the one that I use, but public liability might be more suitable if people come to you. Okay. So we've had a look at legalities, we've got them out of the way, we've had a look at safeguarding, all the serious stuff. And I just wanted to have a look at where are we at with home education in the UK and sort of current trends that we've got in home education. So I've got a little bit of a graph in a minute about why people are home educating, but the most recent official statistics have come from the last census, so around autumn term 2023-24 year, so last autumn. And in last autumn, an estimated 92,000 children are in what we call elective home education. That's the government's way of describing homeschooling, home education. They call it all elective home education. Whether that parent felt it was a forced decision or not, it's still elective. So 92,000 children being home educated. Around 95% of local authorities responded to that census. And just to give you an idea, there was nearly 81,000 the previous year. So there's been a jump from 81,000 to 92,000, just over around 11,000 children extra a year in the UK being homeschooled at the moment. To place that in context, it's still quite a small proportion of the children who are of sort of education age. There are 9 million children registered at school in January this year. So 9 million in mainstream schools, 92,000 in home education. And the next slide that I'm going to just switch on to is from that charity, Education Otherwise. And I've lifted this off their website. And it's just showing reasons why parents are deciding to home educate compared to just after the pandemic, or kind of still in it, weren't we? And now, and 2024. So of parents new to home education, 54% are citing the reason now for going into home education was that their child's needs are not being met in school. And so although we call it elective home education, these parents felt there was no other choice but to pull their child out of school. It just was not the right environment for that learning to take place. And 37% of cases, now parents are citing their child's mental health was the reason. And again, I think the two are linked. I work with an awful lot of children with special educational needs in the daytime who are home educated, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the two very much overlap. And that's the biggest increase we're seeing there, the child's mental health. So from 21 to 24, that's the biggest jump that accounts for that biggest part of that 11,000 children coming out. Around 13% choose to home educate because they feel it's better than mainstream school. 24% just dissatisfied with everything about whole school system, and 9% just feel the curriculum is not right for their child. I would just like to, I'm a maths tutor, so I'm going to go into the statistics of it, but I would like to point out that all 153 local authorities in England were surveyed, but only 790 parents were surveyed. So we have 90,000 children in home ed, but only 790 parents were surveyed here or responded to the survey. So a very, very small response rate from parents. However, this is a trend that I'm seeing. This is a trend that anecdotally really fits with what I'm seeing sort of day to day. So I'll just stop for a moment. I know there's some questions on the chat, but also I wondered if anybody had any thoughts or feelings about this. It's quite emotive, I think, home education, homeschooling, about your thoughts around these kind of statistics. Okay, so people are asking a little bit about safeguarding. If you're tutoring in your own home, do parents drop off and pick up or stay with you? I don't tutor in my own home. I always travel face to face or I'm online. Again, I think personal indemnity, public liability insurance if they're coming to your home. It's your call, but I would prefer parents to be around, even if it's in a different room or nearby a car outside or something, if that's not possible to put them in a different room. Why are there no figures for 2024 for child that thrived in lockdown and bullying? I don't know, Dee. I don't know why there's no figures, but I think that's a really interesting point. There were a number of children who discovered, oh, wow, this is amazing being at home and learning and choosing how I learn and when I get up in the morning and what I do for the day. Some families just delighted in that. And I've seen that, and my own business has grown through that. I think that they realise there's another way, and the parents also change working habits, working from home more often, so they could be around. And I think for some families, you're spot on, Dee, that they just found another way that works better, just slotted in. Bullying, again, I don't know why there's not separate figures for bullying, but certainly I think that would come into the first two figures. Schools, well, maybe child's mental health. Child thrived in lockdown. Yes, I don't know why they're not there really, but maybe they weren't available. I didn't make the graph. I literally lifted it, but maybe they weren't available. Brilliant. Okay, so we've done all the legal bits and bobs there, and I wanted to look a bit more as tutors. Scheduling and timetables. Now, this very much is homeschooling. This is structuring a child's day. And there are those out there that home educate that feel that the day should be much more unstructured. But as tutors coming in, we have an agenda to teach that child something. There's got to be some kind of structure. It doesn't have to be a rigid timetable for that child. The parent may ask for help to write a timetable with them, and I've certainly sat down with parents and done this and looked at, are we covering everything that the child wants to cover in the week, and how can we make it adaptable to getting outside more or visiting things, or just getting that mix right of kind of sat using a book and running around and experimenting and so on. And the beauty of homeschooling is that sort of flexibility and the time and the space that a child has to do project-based learning and an interest. And as a tutor, I found either you're tutoring very intensely towards exams or it's really relaxed. So I've had a very relaxed morning with a student myself this morning. We were making makeshift catapults out of bits of cardboard because we're exploring energy changes and forces in physics. And so, I've had a really nice morning playing around and tutoring some physics. Homeschooling can also occur any time of day or night, really, whenever suits that child. I work with teenagers, and so their circadian rhythm is very much shifted towards the latter part of the day. They tend to do better from sort of midday to midnight. I'm not suggesting that you go and tutor at midnight, that's ridiculous, but certainly a bit later on for those older teenagers, they tend to get the most out of it there. If you have a family at the start of their homeschooling journey, it can be really overwhelming, and it's a massive change for the whole family. If it's going to work, at least one parent should be home with the child. And there may be other siblings attending schools or homeschooling, but they're at different levels. And so it can be quite tricky. There's a big change to family life. And anybody considering homeschooling, I always say, please think it through carefully. Particularly, as we've seen there, one of the reasons is child's mental health or school not meeting needs. When all you want to do as a parent is remove the friction, is make it easier for your child, take away the bullying or the pain or whatever friction there is. But the moment that you do that and take them out of school, it's incredibly different for the child, and all that infrastructure and support of school goes. So it's a really important decision to make for families here. And this is where, as tutors, we can come in and help a little bit of framework and structure around it. In terms of timetabling, I haven't put one up here because it's going to be different for every child. But Emma White of Mark My Papers and I have put together a really sort of comprehensive piece of guidance that's on the Tutors Association website that kind of outlines a lot of the stuff in this talk, but also I've got some examples of timetabling, but I think for a GCSE student and a student working towards A-levels there as well, and what the day can look like. So do have a look at the TTA website. It's under parents and then homeschooling, and you'll find all sorts of different tabs on different aspects of sort of homeschooling. Now, as a tutor, it's very difficult to plan how long it will take a child to cover a specification if you're working towards a particular grade or subject qualification. But it does help to have a rough goal. And normally a schedule will be like 3 to 5 hours a day of learning with multiple subjects, not all at a desk, because it can be done outside, visiting different places, putting in some sports clubs, some socialization clubs there. And so that kind of brings me on to kind of exams. I'm asked an awful lot, should my child take exams? Should we do GCSEs? Okay. We are expensive as tutors. We're an expensive investment if we're looking at years down the line. But the chances are, if you've been contracted as a tutor, if you like, you'll come into a family that they're looking for quite a structured approach, and they've got this goal to sit an exam at some point. It seems strange to work backwards, but we do. We need to work backwards as tutors. We need to know when this child is likely to sit this qualification, because without a deadline, there could just be a never-ending roll. And so we do need an end point. And what's really important about that is that the parent and you, maybe together, find an exam centre. Because the exam centres, as for private candidates, dominate what exams and what qualifications that child can sit. And when I say that, it's because there are certain subjects that have coursework components to them that you cannot sit as a private candidate. So, for example, I tutor PE and sports science. You cannot sit GCSE or A-level PE as a private candidate because of the coursework component. Art, I think, is another subject there where it's the same thing. And so the exam centres, you need to find out in advance what qualifications they sit, what subjects, and then you work back and you teach that syllabus there. Exam centres normally book up around 9 to 12 months in advance. So again, we need to kind of be prepared for that. Parents do that, but you might sit with them and help them through it. So how do you find an exam centre? The list of centres change all the time, but the best way to approach it is to either ask other parents, or as a tutor, go and research what's in your area. I live in a county where there's very few exam centres, and most of my students go out of county or into London to sit their exams. And I have a top 3 that I recommend, because pretty much every single parent who's sat exams has said the same top three. I'm not going to say them here because we're being recorded. It's not a free advertisement, but go and find out from maybe parents you work with if you are a homeschooling tutor. What was the exam centre like? Did they meet your needs? Did they allow you to go there before exams and scope it out? If there was particular requirements on the EHCP, did they meet them? If your child, if that child had SEN, were they accommodating? Did they make reasonable adjustments, etc.? And you will soon know the exam centres near you that are the really good ones. They're the ones that book up well in advance, though. Do tell parents they are fully responsible for checking the exam timetables and getting their child in the right place at the right time, because we know that if they miss an exam, that's incredibly hard to then kind of go and try and sit that paper again. And most GCSEs or IGCSEs are multiple papers. So for science, for example, there are 6 papers and they are not all sat on the same day. They are all sat on separate days. So that's 6 separate trips. And if you're traveling quite a long way, the parent needs to factor that in as well in terms of travel distance, stress levels. You're really stressed if you're sitting in a traffic jam, waiting to go and sit an exam. Do you stay overnight? That kind of thing. In terms of cost, parents can expect to pay around £150 to £420 per subject, not per paper, per subject. And it depends on the level. So functional skills qualifications are probably down around that £150. But combined science, IGCSE is around £375 at the moment. So expensive. Which brings me to kind of approaches for it, checking the time. Okay. So approaches to exams, what I'm really talking about is how many do we take? What level do we take? When do we take? All the questions that parents ask. And there are many different approaches, but there are 2 most common ones that we'll look at. Before we look at approaches, I also just want to say that the majority of homeschooling students will sit IGCSEs, international GCSEs, as opposed to GCSEs. And again, that's to do with the sort of coursework component of things. IGCSEs tend to be all sat at the end with exam, and it's a preference of the exam centres as well. So that's why the majority sit IGCSEs. So with my approaches, I'm a secondary tutor, so I'm going to focus on GCSEs. A-levels are normally sat all together, 3 or 4 of them. But GCSEs you can split. So approach number 1, if you like, is that a student would take a small number of subjects and intend to cover them in just 1 year. So really condense it down, make it really intense, but maybe they only take 2 or 3. And that allows them the time to go sort of hyper-focused into that IGCSE, if you like. Once that's done, you pick the next 2 GCSEs that you might focus on. And then you go again, and that can be completed over a number of years. And I've had a few families do it this way, and they repeat until they've got the desirable number and the type of qualification that they want before that child wants to then sort of move on. So exams can be set out of chronological age that you'd have at school. We kind of, again, get in this fixed mindset. GCSEs must be sat at 16. A-levels are sat at 18, and then they go to college or uni or job or whatever. But not necessarily so. So I've had a student sit at 13. They sat an exam at 13. And then moved on, and 15, and then 17, and then moved on. So small numbers, but intense. And then we can have the other approach, is where we sit a large number of subjects and work through them, like the school approach, basically, concurrently, and you take them when you're ready. That doesn't have to mean you take them all together. So there may be certain subjects that you have a student do that they're ready to take well before the others. Maybe they're a gifted mathematician and they're ready to sit their maths exams a year ahead, or with exams, you tend to have a winter series sat in November and a summer series that's May and June. So maybe they're ready to sit some in winter. and then take the burden off and then focus on those ones for June in those next couple of terms. So it allows that flexibility again to pick and choose exams and how many I'm going to sit at a time. There's no right or wrong approach. It's how that child works best, how they feel the pressure is off, and kind of what their goal is really, whether there is that time pressure or whether families are a bit more kind of flexible as to when they sit that. Anecdotally, I would say most students prefer the first option. They would prefer to do 2 or 3 at a time, and then go do other stuff with their time and then sit those exams before moving on to the next lot. It just takes the pressure off, basically. I do think exams are really highly pressured for our year 11s when they all come together, as many as 11 or 12 subjects, and those 2 months incredibly stressful for those students. So I think most homeschooling students prefer that spread there. Good. Okay. So I'm mindful of time for questions. I'll rush through this next bit, but ultimately we obviously want the best for our students, and I was going to talk a little bit about further and higher education. So again, there are families who like an unstructured approach, but ultimately our standpoint as tutors is that it's a good idea, it's very wise to get some qualifications so that you can then move on to whatever it is that you would love to do with your life. It be that start a business or go to college or be employed. I work with a lot of families to help them find work experience. So our year 10s in mainstream school have just had their work experience week last week. But with homeschooling, they can do work experience whenever they like, and it doesn't have to be a week. It could be a few months. It could lead to a paid job. Maybe they have a voluntary job that they do each week. But I do think it's a fantastic idea when I come into a family to kind of integrate this as part of their timetable, that child gets work experience in as many different areas as they would like. So it could be mum and dad's work, it could be beekeeping, it could be a sports centre, it could be whatever they want to do. But I definitely think work experience is something that we can help a child find, improve their sort of executive functioning skills with organisation, planning travel to and from work, career exploration for them. And so again, go on your county council websites. They have a careers page, which can be explored together with the child and the family as well, and help you find maybe some suitable work experience for them. So I think the key thing, before I sort of head on to sort of questions, is we want to avoid scaling back with the child. In fact, we can enrich even more into their schooling kind of life, if you like, work experience, different subjects. We can take the subjects lower in terms of number, but the key thing is don't necessarily avoid difficulty. It's very easy for a child to come out of mainstream school education, feel really overwhelmed with it, and then scale back on level. But if they was a higher level student, there's no reason why they can't sit higher level papers, especially with a tutor there to guide them through exams. There's no reason why they would have to sit, foundation papers, or they was doing a GCSE, maybe we'll just do functional skills and we'll take the level down a notch. If they are capable, and again, this comes back to aptitude, is their education following that effective, efficient, suitable full-time. If their aptitude is high, then they need to be sitting sort of the higher papers to not cap that level for them of qualifications. Good. Okay. I was going to talk a little bit about socialisation, but I think what I'd like to do is open it up to anybody's questions that they might have at all. I could talk for hours on this, so I've had to stop myself. So I'll just wait for a little moment to see if any come through. You might have some on that new slide that I've put on about socialisation there. I think it's a common concern for parents that you remove your child out of school and they're going to sit on the Xbox all day or in a dark room, and they may well do for the first few days. It may be quite difficult. That child often has interests that keep them going, and they'll get bored quick. Children need to learn. They love learning. We need to learn as adults. I've often found that socialisation is better than ever when children are homeschooling. But like with most things, you have to seek it out. If they're a parent, they have to go and find it. It will not come to you. And there's loads of home education and home schooling groups out there, whether it's just kind of social meetups or actually learning new skills. Great, I've got a question. As a SEN home educated tutor, is there a need to register with Ofsted? No, not as a tutor, but this is exactly why or one of the reasons I'm a member of the TTA. Again, I just feel it gives us that credibility. We are unregulated as tutors, so we have to kind of regulate ourselves, but the TTA just gives us that kind of extra support and credibility and a place to go there, but we don't have to register with Ofsted. Do you just Google homeschooling communities? You can do. I put your area. Facebook's a really good place to start. And also families that you work with. Ask them, what are you doing for social groups? Myself, I put together a pack of all the different homeschooling clubs and activities in my local area. And that's a pack that I then send to parents who are newer to homeschooling as well. So they've got a little pack of instant places they can go to. But again, I've literally gone on Facebook groups, joined home education communities, homeschooling communities, and just sat back and sort of looked at what everybody's doing. But you'll find in your area that museums, educational institutions, museums, art galleries, even my ice skating rink has a special home education morning, like a couple of hours each morning. There's rock climbing, so much. So things that you think would just be for kids after school or at the weekend, you'll be surprised they put on things in the day for those who are homeschooled as well. And I also tutor a lot of SEN students. And there'll be potentially specific groups for those with autism or ADHD or other SENs as well that you can tap into there. Sorry, I need to bring my next slide up. So I spoke about the Tutors Association just having that comprehensive guidance on there. Please do go take a look at that. Lots more information on there than I was able to sort of deliver in today's talk. Somebody has said that how do I advertise? As a previous home education, we're not allowed to let being who we were home educated join due to safeguarding. Thank you, Amalia. So yes, when you have Facebook groups, they're quite protective. You're not allowed to advertise whenever you like, but they will normally have a day or an afternoon where you can put on a bit of an advert that you're a homeschooling tutor. I have my own page. I think just make it really clear that you offer home education. That's the best thing. As not just say, oh, I'm Sarah, I'm a science and maths tutor for GCSE and A-level. Actually say, and I work with homeschooling students. So if you're thinking about home educating your child, or you are and you're working towards exams, I tutor this as well. So make it really clear that that's part of your role, essentially, is to prepare private candidates there or work with homeschooling students. And don't be afraid to ask the families that you work with. This goes in general, really, for advertising. Just say, oh, I've had a slot come up actually on Thursdays. If you know of any other families looking for a tutor, please do pass my details on. And they usually do. If they're happy with your work, they normally will. So Matthew, you've had a company approach you and said I can charge what I want, but they add 20% on as their finding fee. Is this okay? I don't really think that's really the answer, Matthew. I'm not sure I'm qualified for that. Commission companies now work with that model that as a tutor you can ask for what you want as a tutor, whether you get it depends on your pricing, whether you get families, but usually families will pay the tuition company. Julius, you're more qualified than I to probably answer that question today.
We can catch up afterwards, Matthew, regarding
yeah,
for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. I've just put my connection details on there. So if you want to take this conversation further today, please do come find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or I've got my website up there. Yeah, I just want to say so much thank you for coming on today. A little bit more about homeschooling, finding out. And I've just had a few more questions come in just to keep you there for a second. So Dee, thanks for coming on. When I first started tutoring, I worked with a non-for-profit that provided tutorials to home educated students and was registered at the community centre as an exam centre. It might be worth investigating if there are similar organisations in your local area. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are charities that work, and exam centres do pop up and change regularly, so it's worth looking. So thank you very much for coming on and giving me your thoughts and comments and questions. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That was super interesting, and I'm sure everyone found it really, really useful. If anyone does have questions for Sarah afterwards, you can contact, I don't know if Sarah's put her contact details in the messages, but if not, you can contact me and I'll pass them over to Sarah. And as
I
Sarah,
can put them in, yeah.
Perfect.
So,
and as Sarah may also mention that she does have the kind of co-authored homeschooling guide on the TTA website, so I recommend checking it out. It's really, really thorough. And as always, we do have lots of other summer sessions coming up throughout July and August, so please do check them out. And hopefully we'll see you on them very soon. And thanks again, Sarah. Really, really, really
you're welcome. Pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon.